Hey guys, how's it going? I wanted to take a minute and talk about the Savage Axis 2 XP Cabelas exclusive offer, which means that you can only buy this camo pattern. The camo pattern VSX only at the BassPro shops or Cabelas themselves. That's the only store you can get this specific pattern of camo. So a couple things I wanted to get down to with this rifle is I've read some of the reviews on their website and they don't really look that great. Quite a few anyways, and some of them say the scope. It did come with a Bushnell 3 to 9 by 40 scope, pre-mounted and everything, apparently bore-sighted. Once I received the rifle, I looked through the scope and the reticle was off by probably like 10%. So there's no way you would want to start sighting it in at that point. But anyways, what I always do with these axes, I do have another one in a 223 and that's a phenomenal rifle. I always remove the scope and mounts and everything anyways and make sure it has blue Loctite on it. Therefore, you know, your screws aren't going to be backing up anyways. So to me, having a crooked scope on the rifle that it came on wasn't a big deal to me because I replaced this whole assembly anyways. And if I wouldn't have replaced it, I would have removed it, blue Loctite and back on, make sure everything's straight and go sighted in. But in this case, I ended up getting a 20 MOA scope rail here with some new scope rings, quick detach, and 4 by 16 by 44 primary arms scope. It does have the adjustable turret. You can just adjust them for long range shooting, and hence why I bought this 20 MOA rail anyways. So that fixes that. Scope it came with is good if you don't want to shoot past 200 yards, let's say. It'd be good enough. I just will make sure everything's tight and centered and go from there. Now another thing I always check is my barrel sitting straight in the stock. You want it to be dead center in this channel. The same amount of gap from right in here and right in there. You want to have this barrel sitting straight in the channel of your stock. If you can see that, I'm not too sure. One way to check this is grab a piece of paper, normal printer paper, and wrap it around the barrel just underneath here. Hold it on either side with your hands and slide it down into the stock all the way along the barrel, all the way to the receiver. If it goes all the way without any force or wrinkling or anything, you know your barrel is free floating. And that's one of the main things I always check because you want it to be free floating. Let's say it's not, you can always loosen the screws on the bottom here, push your barrel over a little bit in either direction and just snug it down. It doesn't have to be crazy tight because you can wreck stuff like that, and it actually can shoot worse if you over tighten your receiver bolts to the stock. And if that still doesn't fix it, on my 223 rifle that shoots 0.4 of an inch at 100 yards right now, that accurate, what I did there is grab a socket, wrapped around with sandpaper, make sure the socket is the correct size to fit into the channel of this stock, and then slightly sand it down. You might have to have a little bit of a bigger socket or a little bit of a smaller one, depending where the material is that you want to remove. Just make sure to go easy with a finer sandpaper and check your fit at all times until it fits the way it's supposed to. So once you got that clear, you almost got a shooter. Your scope is mounted straight, free floating. You know that's all going to be okay. Another thing is some people complain about the action, how hard it is. This one's really not bad. I like this one quite a bit. Let's take this out. Magazine. It does fit 4. It didn't cycle because I didn't pull it all the way back, but obviously safety reasons. This magazine fits 4, but let's go back to the magazine in a second. I want to talk about this action a little bit more. So obviously empty, we'll decock it. This one's not bad. It's fairly smooth. My 223, this initial pull up is a lot harder than this rifle. This rifle this rifle is a 270 Winchester, so obviously it's going to be a little bit stiffer than, let's say, another one, but overall, I gotta say this action's good for what you pay. And in case it's still too hard, they do make different levers for your bolts, handles I mean, extended ones or some that are at a different angle, so you should be able to open it with a lot more ease if you're having issues. But I paid $570 for this rifle at Cabelas here in Canada. It was on sale, came with a scope. This is a wicked shooting rifle. Honestly, I was never a Savage fan until I bought my 223, did a little bit of work to it, and now I know I got a great shooter. That thing hits pins at 100-200 yards all day long. Not a problem, but you do have to put a little bit of work into them. The stocks are fairly cheap. Even this, it's flimsy, it's light, but I did want to have a light hunting rifle. Obviously the bigger scope adds a little bit more weight than the scope that the rifle came with, but that's okay. Overall, I know this rifle is a shooter, so that's all I care. And it's light. Recoil, because it's a 270 Win, it has a little bit of a sting, but your shoulder doesn't hurt. These butt pads here, they take quite a bit of recoil. Just make sure it's shouldered properly and you won't have any issues with scoping yourself, no problem. Another thing, back to the magazines. Some people in the reviews, that's honestly the whole reason why I'm making this video, is because I think this rifle deserves a little bit more recognition than what it does. Like, for the price, you get a phenomenal rifle. You know it's a shooter and it's cheap. Comes with an adjustable AQ trigger too. I always put it at the lightest setting just because I like the feel of light and crisp, especially greater distances. But back to the magazine. These magazines, some people were complaining about feeding issues, and yeah, I could see that happening, but I haven't had that issue with this one yet. But they do make aftermarket magazines, which I do have one for my 223, and it actually does say Savage on the bottom. And the unlocking mechanism is a little different too, and I would highly recommend, if you're having any issues with feeding or magazine issues, either way, just get another one of these magazines. It's good to have a second one anyways. But yeah, the original ones here, they're just a little bit on the cheap side. The whole locking mechanism and stuff, it's finicky. Just gonna decock this, but one way, if you put this in, first time I put it in here I had issues with it barely coming out, and that is because this end part wasn't in first. Gotta make sure this is all the way sitting tight in the back first, all the way down, and then just clip the front. That way, no issues. But if you put it in straight or front first, you're gonna run into issues and it won't let you release it from here. And at that point, you will have to push the bottom piece down here pretty hard until it clicks, and at that point you can just unlatch it again. So that's all to that. Other than that, honestly, I love this rifle. The finish is kind of cheap, as you can tell. There's definitely a little bit of paint missing already, but whatever, it's going to be a hunting rifle. I know it's going to shoot lights out all day long, and that's all I care, really. Cheap, you don't have to worry about ruining it or losing a lot of money, even if it does get ruined, but pretty hard to ruin a rifle like this. Yeah, other than that, I would highly recommend this rifle, and head over to Cabelas or BassPro shop and order one before they're gone, because who knows how long they're going to sell them for. This, I haven't seen one yet, but maybe they've made them previously, or they might come out with a different design in the future. But either way, it's not going to be my last Savage, I know that much. Never was a big Savage fan until I bought my first Savage Axis 2 XP in caliber 223, and ever since I've been convinced. Awesome. Thanks.